When I graduated and when I finished my study, he was like, hey man, why don't we go to Dubai and set up a branch of this company in Dubai? And this is how my journey in entrepreneurship started, and the journey with Dubai started, really. And eventually the conclusion for a venture building studio concept was that it doesn't work if you don't have a right founder. Studio in Media City, and then the rest, a year and a half, was history. And now we have 2 countries, quite a lot of studios, more than 1,000 sessions being recorded per month. And Poddster is a story of following those breadcrumbs.
Okay, hi guys, and welcome back to the Diary. In this episode, we're joined with Mr. Vuk Zlatarov. I hope I'm pronouncing your name.
Perfect.
Please correct me if I'm not.
Perfect.
So Vuk is the founder of Poddster, Podyx, and Pod Heroes, and a whole lot of other amazing stuff that you've done.
That seems like way too many things.
Yeah, that was our question in the morning, because we went through every single company, and the one that caught my attention and the one that caught her attention were like 2 different things, and we're like, you know what, we're just going to ask about both, because the one that I really liked, and I hope I'm not mispronouncing it, but it's creative without an A.
Creaitive. We can unpack the decision to name the company Creaitive and what was the consequence of that.
It does not rank number 1 on when it comes to SEO.
It does not, yeah.
But it was quite a cool company, and I thought that the whole idea behind it was quite interesting, where you come in as a complete partner and help startups from everything start to finish. How did Creaitive MENA come to where it is now? How did it start?
Well, this was my first company that I ever started. Basically, back in 2014, a friend of mine who was running a business in Belgrade, Serbia, when I graduated and when I finished my study, he was like, hey man, why don't we go to Dubai and set up a branch of this company in Dubai? And this is how my journey in entrepreneurship started, and the journey with Dubai started, really. Initially, Creaitive was a software development firm. So basically, we would build software for anyone looking to build something custom. You have an idea, whether you're a business, corporate, government, or an individual, you're looking for a partner who's going to build that idea into a product, we would do it. So websites, mobile apps, any of that stuff. It operated really as an agency model, which is something that I got familiar over the years, and eventually realized that agency model is not something that I want to do in life. So as a part of us developing and growing, we went through a few different phases of Creaitive. Eventually we landed with the one that we felt is probably the most reasonable, is operating Creaitive as a venture studio. And that happened back in 2019, something like that. We realized that for many years we've been developing very successfully products for other entities that we didn't own any IP of. And eventually we would build something for a few $100,000 that someone else would make millions on. And we felt like, why don't we use what we know, invest into a product, and in exchange get some equity. And this was how Creaitive Ventures was born. We were operating Creaitive Ventures for a few years, and eventually the conclusion for a venture building studio concept was that it doesn't work if you don't have a right founder. And when we realized that, we slowly started slowing down with the whole business model. And that was sort of the end of an era of Creaitive, which lasted for around 10 years, which was an amazing learning journey for us. We learned a lot about business, and eventually we all of the partners started their own separate businesses. Mine was Poddster.
So just going back, how did you qualify all the startups that you worked with when at Creaitive?
So that was the tricky part. At the end of the day, qualifying a startup is an art, and anyone who is in venture capital or venture studios knows that qualifying is a difficult one. Idea is one, founder is something else. At the end, we realized that founder is a key ingredient of a startup. Idea is one, but if there is no founder who is going to execute that idea flawlessly, most likely that company is not going to succeed. We didn't crack the formula. We didn't evaluate founders correctly. So after a few years, we realized that most of the projects that we were involved are not going to succeed because the founders were wrong. And at that stage, we realized that no matter how much work we do from our end, from the product side and the business side, the gamble is on the founder. So unfortunately, we don't have an answer to the question of how do you qualify a founder.
That's absolutely fine. But I did notice that you were partners with two individual companies. One was Louisa, which I thought was quite interesting, where it's a platform that's an e-learning platform for kids, if I'm not wrong. Is that something that you would pick up in the future, or is it that just done?
So that's an interesting example. So that's one of the businesses, one of the products that we started, but eventually, because the founder was not ready to commit, we eventually had to stop the project. So this is a good example that no matter how much work you put into as a venture studio or a venture capital, even no matter how much funds do you fuel in governance, advisory, consulting, if the founder is not ready to take the lead and push forward, not much that you can do. Venture capitals approach this differently. They get very deep in the company. They sit on the board. They introduce a lot of governance. We were getting into these deals more based on trust and relationships. So we didn't have a lot of levers that would allow us to control the future of the company, and most of the future would depend on the founder. So if the founder was not right and ready to push and take the lead, we would end up without a lot of levers that we can pull to influence the future of the company. So at the end of the day, biggest takeaway from that whole journey was that venture studios and venture building doesn't really works unless you have a committed founder with skin in the game who is going to push for the product or the service or the business they're building.
Also, just one more question on that, because this really captured my interest, was that you were also slightly involved when it comes to revenue, finding them investors. How is the MENA landscape different from back home?
I don't really have a lot of experience back home. Most of my experience is here, and most of the funds that we're raising from angel investors. So everything that we've been building so far was backed by angel investors. So we were not getting involved with venture capital. Anyone who is out there exploring paths on how to fund their business has two really ways, or a few ways. You can bootstrap it, try to build something on your own, try to get some traction. You can go towards angel investors. You can go towards venture capital, right? We option for angel investors because most of the projects that we were funding didn't require a lot of funds. The type of projects that we are going after are projects that we are aiming to break even within a year. If the business model is not allowing us to break even within a year, we don't really work on it. And this is only because us as a group of friends who are really starting all of these businesses, we believe more in these type of businesses than unicorn type of shots. We don't feel like getting on a journey of building a company for many years only to possibly start making some money somewhere down the road and then start returning all of the investments back. So when it comes to angel investors, I think there is plenty of capital in the market, and the key is to build those relationships before you actually need funds. So I've met a lot of founders who decide they want to build something, they have an idea, and then they say, okay, let me go fundraise. And some of them ask me, do I have any advice? And usually there isn't much that I can share at that stage, because at that stage it's sort of late to start building relationships. Most of the angel investors that would support your business, you meet before the idea is even born. And you sort of map them out in your life as people who might be willing to support something cool. So when the time comes and you have a cool idea or a project that you want to work on, you have a group of people around you that you can talk to that could possibly invest some small tickets. And this should be enough for you to fuel your growth in the first year or two.
It sparks a thought in my mind. So over here we have, I'm sure we have a lot of projects that are started by university students. And this was something that me and Bakar had also worked on when we were in university. We had this idea of starting an e-commerce website just for modest clothing, because we actually went out, we did full research. We had market research done with over 1,000 people that we interviewed. We used to go over here down to the cafeteria, sit down with a bunch of them and just interview, like, when it comes to getting modern clothing, like let's say a buyer, do you get it tailored? Where do you get it tailored? And our idea was that we will bring the tailor to your house, so you don't have to step out. And that was something that really hit with a lot of people, because us, I hate to say it, but we're lazy. We want things at our convenience, at our time. And it was an idea that really worked with them. But then again, we were students. So despite having a lot of interest, we had a strong team. We had 5 people with different backgrounds. We couldn't really launch it because we hit the COVID mark. And then after that, we just went into our day jobs. And also the monetary aspects, we did win a grant. It wasn't enough to literally launch anything. It was just $1,000, if I'm not wrong. So when you say that you're supposed to build relationships before starting the idea, how would somebody who's, let's say, 18, 19, 20 get to that position where you're not really meeting anybody who's investing? You're meeting your peers who, again, don't have the financial capacity to invest in yourself. What are they supposed to do?
I think the biggest misconception is who is an angel investor. So if I were to ask you how would you describe a typical angel
Somebody
investor?
who has a lot of money and old.
Okay. I think both are
Wrong.
But not necessarily wrong. But you need to define what does it mean a lot of money. That's number one. Number two, old, definitely not. So I will give you an insight. So far, for the previous few businesses over the last few years, we raised funds of approximately 30 to 40 angel investors. Out of those 30 to 40 angel investors, I never did the actual study and now the breakdown, but I will tell you one thing. None of them declares themselves as an angel investors, number one. You can find on their LinkedIn profile saying I'm an angel investor, I invested in 10 startups. None of them. Maybe 10% of them talks about investments. 90% of them are everyday regular people who have a day job and some funds on the side. They know you, they trust your willingness to push. They trust that you can make it, and they're willing to gamble $25,000 on you. This is your angel investor who is going to get you $200,000 to $300,000 to build the first phase of your project. And if you look around your family, I'm pretty sure that if you speak to all of your family members, you will raise at least $50,000. So I think this is the number one misconception of who is a typical angel investor. As a matter of fact, if you would approach a declared angel investor, chances that you're going to raise funds are significantly lower than talking to your aunt. So let that
the angels
sink
are in
in.
the family.
Yeah. So most of people who supported our businesses are just people that we met along the way. We called them up. We said, hey, we're working on something interesting. We would like to hear your thoughts. We share the idea. If they like the idea, they ask you whether they can be a part of it. And I think it's beautiful.
It is. I mean, I don't think as somebody who was 18 and when we were looking into this, we thought about it. And it was just something, when we started our day job, it just, it went to the side and just let go.
Yeah.
So this is something that we have now done for a year, and we've been consistent. So that's good. And this is a nice way to get into Poddster.
Yeah.
Cool.
So from that point, you shifted on to starting Poddster. So what kind of sparked that interest? So at what point did you know that you wanted to start Poddster?
So I think it's a nice segue from what we just discussed. So it was around 2020. It was an 8th year or 7th year of Creaitive. We were not doing really well, and 2020 hit us hard. Things slowed down, and I woke up one day feeling that in general my personal and professional network in Dubai wasn't at the level where I wanted it to be. I didn't know people in the institutions that I wanted to know. I couldn't And as a simple example, someone would approach me and ask me, hey, can you introduce me to a good lawyer in town? I'm like, well, I'm not sure I can do that. Can you introduce me to a financial advisor? I'm not sure I can do that. I would have to think a lot. And then I realized that actually my professional network wasn't really in the state where I wanted it to be. And the idea came up at the time that instead of doing networking in a traditional way, attending conferences, perhaps cold emailing or cold calling, trying to set up a meeting for some business talk, or showing up at the conference with a booth, didn't really work for us. It was very capital intensive and the results were really not great. I'm not sure how much experience you had of visiting a conference and then coming back really not meeting anyone significant or someone who can change your life. So the idea came that instead of doing that traditional way, we should start a podcast. We should do it very professionally and use podcasts as a platform to meet people of interest. I had a very clear idea of who I would like to be surrounded with in life. And in Dubai, those were founders, venture capitals, advisors, senior corporate executives. And I started the podcast, The Change Officer, with my friend at the time, Ivan, and now co-founder of Poddster as well. We started that podcast without absolutely any idea of where this is going to take us. The core goal was really to meet interesting people, and then we were running that for a year or so. I recorded a number of episodes, built a strong team around it, and I guess the idea naturally came that what we are doing currently for us, we can do for others as well. So we decided to offer that team to some of the businesses that we were already having a relationship with. One thing led to another, and from that agency type of setup where we would provide a turnkey production for businesses, the inquiries started coming in for the studio. Initially, we thought, like, why would you come to our studio when we can come and set up this type of 3-camera setup at your office? They didn't want that. They came once, they came again, and then after a few months, we had 200 bookings in our first studio in Media City. And as they say, the rest, a year and a half was history. And now we have 2 countries, quite a lot of studios, more than 1,000 sessions being recorded per month. And Poddster was really just, Poddster is a story of following those breadcrumbs, and following the signs and just executing, I guess, pretty well. So yeah, my life completely changed. So I went from running a venture studio and a software development company to then running podcast studios, and now building a software for podcast studios, Podyx, and a few other.
I mean, that's actually so interesting because I think even for us in this podcast, the aim is to network, to meet different kinds of people in high places and with really amazing stories like yourself. So, I mean, I think there are a lot of networking events over here that, people can go to, but it's so different when you literally get someone to sit 1 hour across you and have a conversation, right? It has more value rather than just meeting someone at some kind of event and bring up a conversation.
And it would definitely not be 1 hour long, 5 minutes and they're like out.
Yeah, the chances that we are going to forget this experience are unlikely, right? If we met somewhere at a conference and had a chat for 5 to 10 minutes, most likely we wouldn't remember each other. Or next time we would speak, we would have to spend a lot of time reminding ourselves, like, where did we meet, etc. But we are never going to forget this setup, right? And this is giving you a chance to invite that person that was on your show and say, hey, Diaries, yeah, what's up? So, and it's very easy to build up from that point. It's an organic and natural way to build a relationship.
And just continuing on that line of thought, we were just listening to your podcast with Kelly, and I really liked the way you said that initially, and we relate to this, is that initially when we started, we used to build the podcast around our guest, which is what we did, because we wanted to meet cool, interesting people like yourself. And we had this breakthrough moment. It was surprisingly both of us, and we had a guest over there, and they're like, you haven't asked us a single question about business. You're just talking to us about me. And because we were so interested in the personality as such, we just kept asking him about himself. And that's when we realized, we're like, okay, we need to ask questions that when people who read about Diaries, they're going to talk about business, they're going to talk about their life, they're going to talk about their journey. That was all missing. And that for us was the moment when we realized that we should also, like you had mentioned in the podcast, when people tune in, they should get what they are coming for, the topic that they are tuning in for. Building on that, we have 8 people on this podcast. And how do you think personas should be defined if you have so many people? Because every single time people are not going to tune in for the guest, they're going to tune in for, at times, the host and how they carry the conversation.
That's true. Yeah. Well, it's a tricky one. I would say, if you have rotating set of hosts, you also need to position the purpose and the goal and your promise to your audience in line with that. You always have to think about usual listener journey, how they find out about you, why they tune in, and why they continue listening to your show. It's all about the promise that you're making to them, right? So what's your promise? What's the Diaries promise as a show? How would you describe it? If I were to ask you what's the show about, why should I tune in?
So our main promise is that we get 1 hour with C-level executives that you wouldn't generally meet. It's basically whatever they would want to ask as 25 to 33-year-old, we do it for them. Okay. That's our main theme.
That's a pretty clear theme. So when you make a promise like that, and as long as that is communicated very clearly across your socials, podcast channels, etc., and you make a certain promise with your episode, it's very important to deliver on that promise throughout that episode. Because if you promise them something with your show and you didn't deliver that in the episode, the chances they're going to come back for more are very unlikely, because they will feel this is actually not what I was looking for. So in that sense, it doesn't matter who is the host. As long as your show is answering or delivering on the promise that you're making to your audience in every episode, it doesn't really matter who is the host. As a matter of fact, maybe over time, they will start enjoying certain hosts and they will start tuning only to those episodes, which is also fine. But when it comes to podcasts, the most important things is being very narrow and niche in your promise. There is a lot of shows out there. If you're too broad and high level, chances that you're going to get eyeballs are slim. You need a unique hook, and I think you have it. You're talking to UA business people, founders, and you are asking questions that a typical 25, 30-year-old would ask, which is cool. And as long as you're promising, I would say that probably you would have to define a little bit more what are those questions. Not everyone would ask the same question, right? Different 25-year-old would ask different questions, and probably you're not covering all of them. So perhaps a bit narrower even definition of what are the types of questions that you're asking. You just keep asking those questions and that's it, you're spot on.
Yeah, that's fantastic,
Yeah.
And that's something that we are right now. I think maybe a little late, but well, nonetheless good that we're figuring it out. It's been a year.
Podcasting is a marathon. It is a marathon, and you're already on the 10th mile. So so you're good. You're already on the right path. So as long as you have that consistency and you're aware of these dynamics, and most of these dynamics in podcasting space are intuitive and common sense. So just keep them in mind, and that's it.
Something that I've never really understood is that a lot of people keep talking about building your own community.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what do they mean, because every single time we listen to any of these sessions, they're like, you need to build a community. I'm like, where do I start? What do you mean when you say I need to build a community? Because it's just one term, they start and they stop it at that. Nobody really explains what it means.
I see what you mean, and I can sometimes I'm sharing the same feeling. Community sometimes has this ambiguity around it. What does it actually mean? I will give you my explanation of what a community is, and I will tell you a bit more about the communities that we are building and how they are helping us anchor our brand. I think if you put community first and you keep community top of mind, first of all, you will be building a business or an organization that is people first. Most businesses depends on people, right? Your customers. If you put them top of mind and build an organization that is serving them well, respecting them well, appreciating that relationship, that's the first step. Now, community sometimes, I think it can be something that is unstructured. It doesn't really exist, but just a group of people that keep coming back to that same place present a community. Certain relationships start being built in that community, which creates a value that is beyond what just your business is offering. Poddster has a very strong community, and that community is described by the relationships that are built in our space. What's happening at the moment is we are building a relationship. In Poddster, there are 25 to 30 this type of scenes happening on a daily basis. So 30 new relationships are being built. Those relationships will always remember Poddster as a place where they met, which is a very strong point. So if you find a way to capitalize on that, you have a very strong brand value proposition. So what we did is we formalized the community in the Pod Club. So Pod Club now is the official community that is powered and supported by Poddster, which is gathering people in our space, in other spaces around the town. Because at the end of the day, we like interaction, and everyone is looking to be a part of something bigger than just a brand. So I think that's then an enormously strong lever that you can pull to support your business.
It is interesting because Pod Club, I'm sure, is one of the most successful communities that I've seen, and we are part of Pod Club. And the way the communication happened and so active, it's one of the communities that I would say that it's the only alive community that I'm part of. Because over here in this part of the region, I don't see other communities, maybe some niche Facebook groups or a few niche WhatsApp groups that are alive, but they're not those many that I would say.
I think the reason is because people often underestimate the amount of work that you need to put in a community. Community is difficult to live on its own and exist on its own. You need to put a certain framework and a certain organization in place for that community to live. And then the magic will start happening. But without management, orchestration, and that continuous push, communities usually slow down. So I think the Pod Club is a great example of how we managed to put a certain framework in place and let people create the community themselves. Because at the end of the day, communities are about people who are in. You can't really... That's a funny thing. You cannot create a community. Community is being created by everyone who is inside. It's your job to allow them to and inspire them to collaborate and communicate inside. And I think that's what Ivan, Fari, and the team did really well with the Pod Club.
It's an excellent example for
Thanks.
sure.
This is a testimonial now for the Pod Club.
Right. So Poddster is Dubai based. Do you feel Dubai on some level provides any kind of incentive for this kind of media, like podcast or anything?
Sorry, what is the question?
Do you feel like Dubai in any way kind of supports this kind of media form, like podcasts?
I think podcasts as a medium are relatively new, especially in the region. So there isn't really a lot of infrastructure that is supporting it that directly. But there has been quite a lot of movements over the last year or so that are going towards podcasts. Not only podcasts, really, more content as a whole. Podcasts these days rarely are just audio, right? Most of them are video, as we're doing now, and most of them end up being on YouTube, social media, etc. And they become shows that are delivering a variety of different formats of content. So we've seen a lot of conferences around Dubai that are content-oriented, content-related. Press Club is organizing yearly podcast events. So there are things that are happening, but I think there is still a long way to go to reach the peak performance of this industry here in the region. I think brands also will slowly start recognizing podcasts as strong mediums, and they will fuel in funds in shows that will also support growth. And overall, everyone who is in this industry will learn how to do it better. And then we'll start being competitive in the world scene of podcasts.
Yeah, that's an interesting thought because I work in the PR side of things. And even now, despite how many podcasts are out there, we don't really qualify it as a proper media. For us, media stops at, I would say, the new media stops at Instagram, YouTube, all of that. And even though all the podcasts are on YouTube, we're like, it's not really a media as such. When it comes to interviews, we stop it at radios. It's the traditional form, which is either print, newspaper, or radio ads, radio shows. We don't really count podcasts as a media platform as such, even though it is growing. So definitely there's a long way to go, because I think just the other day we were speaking, okay, not the other day, but like long time ago, when the US elections was mainly not rigged, but decided because of how Trump was there on a lot of new media platforms and he was able to communicate with the younger audience. So in that sense, I'm sure that's what you said, that we have a long way to go when it comes to catching up.
So there are obviously English-speaking podcasts and then Arabic podcasts are performing a lot better because demand for Arabic content is massive, and then there is a lack of supply. So if there is one piece of advice, if you do speak Arabic, start an Arabic show. It's going to perform much better than English one. English-speaking shows are facing a challenge of, especially here, of a very segmented market, and at the same time, joining a global arena of shows. Getting attention as an English show is notoriously difficult. You need to understand that when you publish this show on Spotify or YouTube or Apple Podcast, people are choosing between you and any of the most successful shows out there. They see your cover art, they see the cover art of Acquired Podcast or I don't know, Jay Shetty Podcast, some of these popular brands. And they're making a decision whether they're going to listen to you or them. And most likely they're going to go for a safe bet, unless they feel adventurous and they want to give it a shot. And usually they will give it a shot if the topic of the show is super relevant for them, more relevant than the trust towards this bigger show is. And this is your chance to grab someone's attention. And this goes back to the promise of your show. Because of that, most of English shows are struggling to grow, because they start shows that are not that focused, and they end up competing with globally most successful shows out there in a very segmented market like Dubai and the Middle East, where you have a lot of different nationalities and you can't create content that applies to all of them. So that's a challenge. But with that being said, there is a number of shows, and with the right network, you can tap into the big market of Dubai, but you need to involve a number of different shows. You can't work just with one. So, but I think over time, this will improve as well, and brands will realize the impact, because the impact of podcast is way bigger than magazines or social media or ads and stuff like that.
So did you face any challenges when you started your businesses in terms of financing it? And, if you did, how did you kind of overcome that? I
mean, obviously, that's the key of any business. How do you keep the lights on? I had different experiences. First experience with Creaitive and Creaitive Ventures. Later on, typical service-based business that depended on us closing projects, relatively short-term projects, and the sales cycles, which were very long. We always struggled to pay the bills. We were living not even month to month. We were living 2 weeks to 2 weeks, praying that someone was going to pay us that advance payment or pay a next installment. And that's notoriously difficult, especially here in the region, where payment plans sometimes and the general culture of making a payment is not really at a great level. So you end up waiting sometimes 90 days to get paid. And as a small business, you struggle. So I can say that those first 7-8 years of me doing business, I will see when I'm older how much that shaved of my life, but it was very stressful. But that also was influenced by the business model itself. Business model of service providing, where you're technically selling people's time, is a difficult business, because to scale you need to hire more people. Any drops or slowdowns in the market are costing you a lot, because you have a lot of staff, you have salaries to pay, and what you earn in a year you lose in 2 months. So it's a difficult business to operate unless you figure out a service that has a very high margin and you're very competitive. There is certain uniqueness. So that was one chapter where I learned a lot of lessons. Number one lesson was never borrow money to pay your expenses. Borrow money only to invest in channels that will generate you more sales. A number of times we would fill the gaps in our P&L and our expenses by taking a loan which was basically a one-time, loan. You cover the expenses, but you didn't generate more sales that were solve the reason why you even created that gap, that hole. So a lot of lessons learned in those few years, which then I didn't repeat when we started Poddster. Poddster was profitable from day one, which was really good. And I think that if you're starting a new business and you don't have to start it, you have time to think about what you're really going to do. You have all the freedom to pick a business that is going to have decent margins, not a lot of competition, not a lot of fixed cost of operations that operates in markets that are not super competitive. You don't necessarily have to jump into a business that from the get-go has certain ingredients that are not really working in your favor. Business that has low margins, where it's difficult to create competitiveness, barrier to entry is very low, operational costs are very high. These were the things that all creative things, right? So that made us, high expenses of operating a business in Dubai, web development, which is super competitive, so it's difficult to win projects, margins that are low. So it didn't really have right ingredients for us to scale. And then Poddster was slightly different, which allowed us to scale faster and more healthier. So yeah, a number of other experiences as well, but I will let you take the lead.
Experiences that you would want to share?
I mean, I'm not sure now in particular about the financial aspect of the business, but maybe you can take the lead with some more questions and get me inspired to share.
Sorry, I'm just taking in your story, and because it had a lot of aspects when it comes to everything that you did not want to repeat with Creative MENA. It's Creative Ventures or Creative MENA?
So
Creative
is was the name of the company. Creative Ventures was a venture building studio, and then we operated in Dubai and Singapore. So this regional office here was MENA.
Is the Singapore branch still alive?
No.
We
closed that whole business and moved forward.
When it comes to Poddster, and this is segueing a little bit, but when it comes to just monetizing podcast, this was a question that we had when we started. We have a lot of competition here in this region when it comes to reaching out and understanding at what stage, firstly, that you start monetizing your podcast. And when you do, what are the aspects that you should look into? What are the revenue models that you should tap into? Where should you go? Where do you even start? Because a lot of us, when we started, it's just a passion project. We don't really have that. This is when we're going to start monetizing. It's just a passion project that we start with. And then we reach a stage where maybe this should be something more than it is because it has interest.
Yeah. Starting it as a passion project is a number one thing to do if you even think about monetizing. So that you did that well. The problem with monetization and why most shows are struggling to monetize is because they don't start that as a passion project, they start that as a financial project. And their goal is to make money. When your goal is to make money with podcasts, you lose motivation very fast because making money fast with podcasts are rarely happening. Unless you have a big platform already that you're building on top. You are famous, you're a celebrity, you're an influencer, and then you start a show to monetize on that. If you're an everyday individual that is starting a show, money won't come fast. So if that's your number one goal, 10 episodes in, you won't be making any money, the cost will be growing, and you will feel demotivated to continue. So number one tip is start something you're actually passionate about, like you guys are. You said that you actually enjoy coming here on Saturday, meeting all of your friends and producing a cool episode with someone interesting.
It's a 6-day weekend, 6-day work week.
There you go. But that's a key ingredient why you continued and you have 60 plus episodes without making significant dollars, right? So that's number one reason. This is also going to help you create a show that actually has a soul and that people will recognize and they'll start following because of that. When you build that audience and that traction, this will allow you then to discuss monetization and possibly close some deals, some ads. But the growth in the listenership and in the followers and the downloads will come from you actually creating a successful original show that people genuinely like. And on the back of that, you can then discuss monetization with someone.
And let's say people I'm sure this is a question that people ask you a lot, is that is there a framework? Is there any steps that they should follow when it comes to just thinking about monetization? Because what are the aspects or who are the key drivers that they should go to? Should they look at sponsorships? Should they look at just monetizing it purely?
The types of monetization.
Just YouTube. What are the channels?
There are a few ways. There is the top of mind way is you always think about the ads, CPM type of ads, which is the most difficult type of monetization, especially here in the region, which basically means they pay you a certain amount of dollars for every 1,000 downloads that you get. I'm not sure how many downloads are you getting, but probably it's not multiple thousands or tens of thousands. It's in a smaller bracket because of the region and how the region dynamics are, which means that if you would run those type of ads, probably you would make $50 per episode, which is not even going to pay for the electricity, right, that you've spent throughout the show. However, there are different ways to monetize. You can monetize by closing a brand deal with someone who wants to get their brand exposed to the audience or to the guests that are coming on your show. And this is an interesting way to monetize. If you clearly define who is the audience that is watching your show and who are the guests that you're bringing to your show, and you find a brand that resonates with that type of audience and that could benefit from exposing their brand name to that type of audience, you can close a deal that is basically a branded type of deal where they brand your whole show. And this is another way. That's very popular here in the region, and it brings a lot of results to businesses and companies. Some other ways are, but these, at the end of the day, all of the monetization comes on the back of successful show. Without a show that is actually generating traffic and engagement and conversions with the audience, it's very difficult to monetize. But when you do have audience, that's unlocking you a number of different ways that you can monetize. You can do commission-based deals, so anyone who signs up for a certain product, you get a commission. You can sell merchandise, you can sell a product, you can sell a service through your show. A lot of shows are doing that. So you design and create a service that you will sell to the audience that is watching the show. But the number one mistake that I'm seeing from the first row in Poddster is that shows are looking for monetization before actually building an engaging audience. Because at the end of the day, if someone does pay you a few $1,000s for one episode, you need to think about how are they going to get a return for that investment that is at least going to be bringing the money back, if not making more, 2 to 3x. So if I paid you $3,000 as a show, how would you bring Poddster back $10,000 for our investment? If you don't have an underlying platform that is going to deliver that, eventually, even if they sponsor 1 or 2 episodes, this is not going to last long. Most shows here have less than 100 downloads, and they're asking, like, how can we monetize our show? How can we make some money? Unfortunately, only by tricking someone into sponsoring you. So number one goal is actually have an audience and then start thinking monetization, because you need to at the end, look yourself in the mirror and say, hey, do I really have something that I can sell or not? This is like a very direct truth that I tend to say, but it's a reality. The easiest and the best way to monetize is to monetize your guests. So we met today, we might close a deal tomorrow. And your biggest monetization source are the people who are in this chair. This is how I use the change officer, basically. So I use the change officer to actually do business with people who are coming to the show, and then I didn't care about bringing anyone to sponsor my podcast or have a brand to sponsor my podcast. So that's probably the best way to do it.
You get them for a whole hour, they meet you, they like your personality, and you just capitalize on that.
Yeah, I mean, we can do something together. Like, all of you are in different industries. I heard a lot of different fields here. We might call you tomorrow to help us with some PR.
We have 8 different industries right here in this room. You can absolutely.
So you're smarter than there is a whole plan behind this.
It's a whole plan. When we started, we were like, we can't have 2 of the same. We need to tap into all. So even IT, we just have it in-house. We don't outsource anything. Just do it in-house. Even when we started, a lot of the editing used to be done in-house. We would edit the episodes ourselves. Liz here and Abu Bakr over there, they would edit every single episode. And then after they got a job, we then started outsourcing. So we didn't really put in a lot of money initially when it comes to editing it, because editing over here is a cost. And that's not something that we wanted to put money behind when we could do it in-house. Even when it comes to social media, it is a taxing process. It drives us mad sometimes to be on top of it every single time, and every single day we're like, we have a day job, and to be online and to like post everything on time, put it up there. It is time consuming, but again, it's the whole passion that goes behind it that drives us to actually put in that time and effort to, no matter how much we might drive each other crazy, it goes live. I Up until last week, I don't think there was for a whole year we have ever been late to upload anything before 5 p.m. Like 5 p.m. It's up there. So the change officer that you said was quite a smart idea, to just have people in the seat and talk to them, and just use that to build a relationship forward. It's something that we thought about, but we weren't very sure that we would want to put up guest in that position. They can recommend us for things, sure, but we wouldn't want our guest to sponsor us.
Yeah, it's not about sponsorship. It's about building a genuine relationship with people, right? So we have two ways to continue from today. We can go our own ways, or we can stay
Ideally
in touch.
not.
Yeah, or we can stay in touch. In most cases, staying in touch depends on you, most likely. And I'm not saying this in any arrogant way. I'm saying this because I was in that seat. Most likely, guests will not keep checking in with you and like, how are you guys doing? But you have an upper hand to stay in touch with your guests. And if you find a way to keep all of your guests who are in this seat somehow engaged, or you stay top of mind, you really have an amazing opportunity to build something more with them. What I'm seeing happening is that the episode was recorded, and the show doesn't stay connected or in touch with their guests. They'll go their own ways, and after year 2 to 3 years, that relationship is gone. You will have to spend a lot of time to refresh. But if you find a way to stay top of mind, newsletter, checking in from time to time, inviting for a get-together, once a year you gather all of your guests in one room and do a cocktail or a dinner, that's how you continue building those relationships, and this is what you can capitalize the most. So that's the answer on how to monetize the show most effectively.
That's something that we've thought about, because the way this team is split, we have the finance on that side and we don't look at them. We ignore them completely. We have the support at the back, and then you have us who are in the creative and art space. So when they get a finance guest, they go on for hours, and we're like, what do you mean? What does the term mean? So you would see us over there Googling stuff. We're like, what does that term mean? It's,
GPT.
I think GPT, not GPT. We're like, okay. Like, I think it was quite interesting when I found it rude when we had a finance get, and he's like, so I forgot the exact term, but it is basically, is your business making money? And I'm like, I'm like, how did you even ask that to the guest
did you
directly?
get an answer?
He did get an answer. It was a very ambiguous answer, but it was an answer nonetheless. Okay. And if it was me on the other side, just hosting the same podcast, I would have a lot of questions. I'm like, what do you mean? What does this mean? What does that mean?
But you know what? I think that's a very legitimate question these days. There's a lot of businesses out there, especially in the startup scene, they're really not making any money, and they're just burning money, and especially VC money. And a straightforward question: are you making money? Which should be a normal question for anyone doing business. You're either making money or not making money. Should be a pretty normal question to ask. So I actually like the question.
But it's a podcast. I wouldn't ask.
Yeah, I know. Well, it depends. Like, it depends what's the type of your show. If you're not asking those type of questions every time you're running a show, then it's awkward. Like, all of a sudden, a very straightforward question. But if your show is recognized because you are asking this type of straightforward questions, I think then it will find its own audience. How many shows out there are asking a question, how much money did you make last year? Probably not a lot of people would answer, but like, if you find a way to get those answers, a lot of people would listen to the show because everyone wants to know that answer for anyone in the room. How much money did you make last year? Don't ask me that. I'm not gonna answer. But like,
we were gonna try, but okay, fine. Because I think a lot of the money questions are not really answered because it's something that we see in the media industry as well. We have a whole section that goes on the national that's just how much money do you make? Where do you invest it? What do you do with the money? And it is a very, very successful session. section that's run by the national, but for them to find those people who would be willing
To share.
to like put their hand up and say, this is how much I make every year and this is where I invest.
Probably business
That-
owners or founders, and not straightforward. So, but you
Yeah.
can ask questions about net margins, approximate revenues, and so on, and then try to get there approximate.
Yeah, they will give you a percentage. They'll be like,
Yeah.
it's like this much percent. And I'm like, what does that mean? Like,
Yeah.
how much percent is what of what? Like it can be 100% of 1 dirham, which is nothing.
Yeah.
So you mentioned that when you want to start a podcast, you have to be passionate about it, right? That should be the reason why you started. So after you have the passion down, what are the next steps to starting a podcast for a newbie?
I think it's starting a podcast. It can be also looked at starting a business. Most of the things that you would think about when you're starting a business are the things you want to think about when you're starting a podcast. We talked about the promise already. You really need to figure out what's that promise that you're making to your audience. Being passionate about topic 100%, being very clear to what you're going to deliver to your audience is number 2. When you have these 2 in place, you develop everything else in line with that. So if your promise is that you will be asking financial questions that an average 25-year-old would ask a C executive, the name of the show, the description of the show, the name of every episode, the branding of every episode, YouTube thumbnail, everything needs to be in line with that promise that you're making. If you're starting on your own and you don't have a big profile, etc., you need to play on this clarity in your communication and messaging, because that is increasing the chance that the audience will recognize you as relevant and listen to your show when you are compared to other reputable channels, etc. So remember that your game and your play here is that you are buying their attention because you are making a better promise that someone's brand size. Do you understand what I mean? If someone is comparing you, whether they're going to listen to your show or they are going to listen to Anas Bukash, for example, your episode's promise needs to be more exciting than the authority of the other show. This is when you're going to get that download or that view. So if you are ambiguous, if you have a show, a name that doesn't really tells what really is in the description, which is not really clear, the chances that someone that doesn't know you will give you a shot are slim. And the stats are showing that 47% of your traffic or discoverability comes from social media, another 43% from YouTube, and the rest is from referrals and recommendations and so on. So your friends will recommend your show, but most of your traffic will come from people who discover you on social media and on YouTube. So staying in line with the promise that you're making that promise very strong, unique and niche, will help you establish that first base platform where you have few tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of followers maybe. From that point onwards, you can play with your branding and start being a bit more artistic and ambiguous and having a name that doesn't really say a lot. But then you have a foundation and the base that you can use to build up. So that's a key principle. Everything else, I think, is something that you can play with, etc. But this is the key thing that is going to make a big change of how fast do you grow in the beginning.
So tell us a little bit more about Pod Heroes and Podyx.
Podyx, yeah. So Podyx is basically a result of us solving a problem for Poddster. So when we started Poddster, we had an idea and the goal to create a customer experience that is very seamless, easy to use for customers, and increasing our revenue as much as possible. So the core was to build a booking process for Poddster that is very seamless and easy to use. Because we couldn't find any solution out there, we decided to start building something ourselves. So initially the idea was that this tech will be a part of our business and our business IP. And that went really well. In the first year, we scaled Poddster from around 200 bookings to almost 1,000 bookings per month. And this was only possible on the back of technology that we built, which was basically allowing our customers to independently book our studios, manage their booking, and purchase additional services that we were offering. So this was increasing our revenue and reducing significantly operational expenses that we were having for customer support and people who would have to handle all of these bookings, usually by WhatsApps or phone calls, etc. But then at one point we realized that the technology that was built, we were sort of limiting the growth of that technology with the walls of our studios. We were not expanding Poddster fast enough, as fast as technology could grow on its own. So we decided to take the technology out, pack it into a business, and give it its own life. So this is how Podyx was born. Then Podyx was then positioned as revenue operation software for podcast studios that is helping them scale efficiently by boosting their revenue and streamlining the operation and replacing most of the tools that will have to be subscribed in a usual scenario. So Podyx now operates as a separate business. It's a technology part of the whole group. It's being used by a number of studios around the world, and is the first and the only solution of that kind for this super small niche industry of podcast studios.
Sorry to cut you off. What are the tools that you've mentioned that you package them together with?
So any business these days have to be subscribed to an enormous amount of tools in most cases. We are sort of starting being dependent on these tools. Businesses are separating budgets per employee for tools that they will be subscribed to, and the percentage of their salary that goes towards subscriptions is growing exponentially. So even GPTs now, or just emails, marketing tools, project management tools, file transfers, storage, etc. All of these are becoming essential expense of any business. So podcast studios these days have to be subscribed to at least 10 tools. Tool that is going to help you with scheduling, file transfers, collaboration, editing later on, marketing tools, emails, cloud storage, etc. So the goal really of Podyx is to replace a good part of them. In most cases, what happens is that most of you are using, for example, email, or in many cases G Suite, for example. So you are paying maybe $17, $18 per one email, but actually you're using maybe 10 to 15% of capabilities that suite of products are offering. So just Google Sheets or Google Docs are offering a lot more capability than you're actually using to sum up three numbers, right, and get the sum, or in Excel, right? So in many cases we are paying these subscriptions, let's say $10, but we're actually using $1.50. Right? So on a company level, where you're spending thousands of dollars, you're actually wasting 80% of that fund that you're paying, because there is no tailored solution for your business, and you have to use different tools. So the goal really with Podyx is to build a tool that is going to replace most of them. You can't replace all of them, but we want to replace most of them and enable studio then to scale a lot faster with something that's really tailored for them. So that was really the angle that we approached, and this is basically phase one. Phase two would be to leverage the access to global scene of podcast studios and build on top of that.
And what are the target markets that you're looking at when it comes to expanding?
Because it's such a micro industry where you have maybe a few thousand studios around the world. We have to look under every rock and corner in the world. So literally the globe is our market, and we really need to work hard to find all of these studios around the world and in every city around the world. So it's a very niche market, extremely niche market, borderline impossible to make a business in. But we have an interesting plans for future, and we think we can do something great.
So how do you, just continuing that line of thought, how do you see the podcasting industry changing here in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's an interesting question, and everyone is asking themselves, and especially we are asking ourselves quite a lot, sometimes sleepless nights, because most of our businesses now depend on the future of this industry. I think industry will evolve, and the quality of content that we are producing will evolve. Access to technology these days and AI and agents is helping you, is not going to replace podcasters and content creators. It is going to enable you to create much higher quality of content. What used to require a team of 10 people can now be done by one person, which means that what used to be a luxury for some to create a Netflix style documentary, now you can do, with 2 people crew with some cameras, drones, and AI editing tools. You see YouTubers now who are having shots and quality of the shots that is literally Netflix quality 10 years ago. And they are doing it on their own with a camera and a drone and few AI tools. So I think quality of content will increase drastically, which is going to generate more engagement. People will have to work harder for that attention. And that's going to drive probably more ad spend and more advertising money coming in, etc., fueling the growth of the industry. So most of the days I'm optimistic about the industry, and then some days I feel like maybe we're all going to be replaced, and then we'll have to switch the industry. But 9 out of 10 days I'm quite bullish on what's going to happen.
I think that's an interesting note to, I think, end this on before they start kicking us out of the studio. But thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Vuk. And it was lovely meeting you, and we hope to stay in touch and hopefully call you in for a second episode as well.
Thank you. Yeah, it was my pleasure. I enjoyed. Good luck with the show, and let's stay in touch.
Thank you.